Welcome to Pluralsight. My name is Julie Lerman.
And this is Steve Smith. Together, we'd like to welcome you to our course, Domain-Driven Design Fundamentals.
Steve is a trainer and architect with Nimble Pros and spends a lot of time helping teams write better code faster.
And Julie is well known in the DDD community for helping reluctant teams embrace domain-driven design.
In this course, we give you a strong foundation for learning how to build applications and microservices using domain-driven design.
DDD has proven to be a very effective approach for managing complex requirements. The original version of this course has helped many thousands of learners leverage domain-driven design, and they have shared amazing feedback. Now, we've updated the course and its sample application to reflect ideas and tools that have emerged since that first version.
Some of the major topics that we'll cover include: what are the essential ideas of domain-driven design? What are the main patterns used in domain models?
We'll also talk about how to break up concepts into smaller parts, and how these smaller aggregates and contexts communicate with one another.
By the end of this course, you'll know how to break down customer requirements into a maintainable domain model and structure a solution using domain-driven design.
Before beginning the course, you should at least be familiar with software development, ideally using C#.
From here, you should feel comfortable diving into DDD and design patterns with courses on the DDD Learning Path and the Design Patterns Learning Path. We hope you'll join us on this journey to learn domain-driven design with the Domain-Driven Design Fundamentals course at Pluralsight.
Hi, this is Steve Smith.
And this is Julie Lerman. Welcome to our course, Domain-Driven Design Fundamentals.
We're looking forward to sharing our experience with DDD and how it's helped us and our clients. You're welcome to reach out to us online.
You can find me online at thedatafarm.com or on Twitter at Julie Lerman.
And I'm online at ardalis.com or on Twitter as @ardalis.
Eric Evans coined the term domain-driven design in his groundbreaking book with the same title, published in 2004. Since then, other titles have followed, including great books expanding on the subject by Jimmy Nilsson and Von Vernon, and so many who are now also great experts at DDD. And there are also now a number of fantastic DDD conferences and even a well-established virtual meetup.
There's definitely continued and renewed interest in domain-driven design as both the demand for and complexity of software continues to grow. Domain-driven design is commonly referred to as DDD and even has its own Twitter hashtag, DDDesign. Although DDD has been around for so long, it continues to be a great approach to building software that we both enjoy employing and sharing with others. And as more minds have gotten involved in DDD, it continues to evolve.
Domain-driven design is a huge topic. Our focus will be on the developer perspective and the technical and coding aspects of DDD more so than architectural concerns. We'll start by talking about why we think you should even be watching this course. Next, we'll jump right into an existing solution so you can get a concept of what the code and the architecture of an application written using DDD practices looks like. Then we'll start digging into the big DDD concepts like modeling problems of the domain, what the various technical components of DDD are, and how you can use DDD to manage complex projects. Throughout the course, we'll use the existing solution so you can see how some of this process works.
With this in hand, we'll walk through extending the sample based on a new request from the client. Since this is a fundamentals course, we certainly don't expect to turn you into an expert by the end of it. However, you should be well on your way to understanding the value behind domain-driven design and how some of the practices can be employed to improve your success with complex software projects. Right now, if you're new to DDD, you don't even know what you don't know yet. However, once you're done with this course, you'll know more about DDD, but of course you'll also realize how much more there is to learn. That's one of the great things about our industry. The more you know, the more you realize how much more there is you don't know.
In this module, we'll focus on the value of domain-driven design. You'll learn what the term represents and what problems DDD can help you with in your software building process.
Not only will we share the benefits of DDD, but we will be sure to highlight some of the potential drawbacks. Finally, you'll get a look at a small application that we'll be using throughout the course as you learn DDD.
Domain-driven design focuses on the problems of the business domain that you're attempting to solve. It's a critical shift from decades of focusing on how to store your data and then letting that drive how the software is designed. But that workflow added a lot of unnecessary complexity to the task of building software. So why should you watch this course? Why should you care about learning domain-driven design? Steve and I have both been designing and developing software for a very long time. Without giving away our ages, we've got over 40 years of experience between the two of us. And we've both been very inspired by domain-driven design. In many ways, it aligns very naturally with ideas that we've each come to from our own experience. It also takes these ideas and lays them out in a way that's not only illuminating, but it's repeatable. When Eric Evans wrote his book, his goal was to understand what was behind the successes he had achieved with large-scale, complex software projects, and what were the patterns. That's what he laid out in the book.
This is why we care about DDD, and we hope that you can gain from our experience, which is why we put together this course. DDD provides principles and patterns to help us tackle difficult software problems and even business problems. These are patterns that are being used successfully to solve very complex problems. The more we've learned about DDD, the more we've found these ideas align with the approaches we've learned from our many combined years of experience. DDD provides us with a clean representation of the problem in code that we can readily understand and verify through tests.
We developers live to code. When starting on a new project, we're eager to jump in and start coding so that we can build some software. But you can't build software unless you truly understand the client's needs. DDD places as much emphasis on not only comprehending what your client wants, but working with them as full partners through a project. The ultimate goal isn't to write code, not even to build software, but to solve problems.
You need to realize that nobody really wants your program. They want what it can give them. There's a famous saying in sales: buy a quarter-inch drill. They want to buy quarter-inch holes. Your client's not interested in building software, but in being successful at their mission. Software provides a more efficient means to this end.
Domain-driven design is for solving complex problems. Evans put a lot of thought into the subtitle of his DDD book and came up with Tackling Complexity in the Heart of Software. But DDD itself is a complex topic. To start with, we think it's helpful to look at it from a very high level. We call it the 10,000-foot view here in the U.S., but that's probably 3,048 meters to the rest of you.
One of the critical pieces of DDD is to encourage better interaction with domain experts. These are the people who live and breathe the business or process or whatever you are targeting with the software you are planning to write. You may be thinking, but we already talked to them. Perhaps, but probably you're using your terms, not theirs, and maybe talking in the language of tables in a database rather than domain concepts. Or you may presume that after some standard requirements gathering, you can infer enough about the problem at hand to design the solution on your own. After our own history in the business of developing software, we know that that rarely ends well. DDD guides us to engage with the domain experts at much greater length and through much more of the process than many software teams are used to doing.
When talking with Eric Evans about this, he told us that you really need to cultivate your ability to communicate with business people in order to free up their creative modeling. Another core theme in DDD is to focus on a single subdomain at a time. Say you're asked to build software for a spaceship manufacturer. They describe their business tasks such as purchasing materials, engineering, managing employees, advertising their spaceships, and share with you their dreams about mass-producing spaceships when the market's ready. Each one of these tasks are, in themselves, a complex subdomain filled with their own specific tasks, terminology, and challenges, and those subdomains may have only minimal interaction between them. Many applications just try to do too many things at once. Then adding additional behavior gets more and more difficult and expensive. With DDD, you'll divide and conquer. By separating the problem into separate subdomains, each problem can be tackled independently, making the problem much easier to solve. This lets us focus on the problem of employee management separately from the problem of sourcing materials for producing the spaceships. The term modeling is important in DDD and refers to how you decipher and design each subdomain. You'll learn much more about this as you progress through the course.
The final theme in our high-level perspective of DDD is writing the code to implement each subdomain. The principle of separation of concerns not only plays a critical role in identifying the subdomains, but within each subdomain we use it as well. Many applications spread the domain logic between the persistence layer and the user interface, making it much more difficult to test and to keep all of the business logic consistent. DDD applies separation of concerns to help steer you clear of this problem by focusing on the domain and not on details like how to persist data into a database or how to connect to a service in the cloud. Those become implementation details that you can worry about separately. While implementing these subdomains, the focus is on the subdomain, the problems of the subdomain you are trying to solve with your software. You don't get bogged down worrying about infrastructure concerns.
Domain-driven design is a big commitment. While Steve and I have both chosen to leverage pieces of DDD as we learn more about the wider scope, one thing we're both confident about is that it's providing a lot of benefits to our work. Because DDD guides us to focus on small, individual, nearly autonomous pieces of our domain, our process and the resulting software is more flexible. We can easily move or modify the small parts with little or no side effects. It even lets us be more flexible with our project resources as we're building the software.
The resulting software also tends to be more closely mapped to the customer's understanding of the problem. DDD gives you a clear and manageable path through a very complex problem. When you look at the code, you can see that it's generally well organized and easily tested, and the business logic all lives in one place. Even if you don't use full DDD for a project, there are many patterns and practices that you can use by themselves to benefit your application, so keep watching even if you don't think you'll need all of it.
We often describe DDD as a way to take big, messy problems and transform them into small, contained, solvable problems. But DDD is not a path for every project. Its real benefit is for complex domains. Even Eric Evans explicitly states that DDD isn't suitable for problems when there's substantial technical complexity, but little business domain complexity. Using DDD is most beneficial when the complexity of the domain makes it challenging for the domain experts to communicate their needs to the software developers. By investing your time and effort into modeling the domain and coming up with a set of terminology that's understood for each subdomain, the process of understanding and solving the problem becomes much simpler and smoother.
But all of this comes at a cost. You'll spend a lot of time talking about the domain and the problems that need to be solved, and you'll spend plenty of time sorting out what is truly domain logic and what is just infrastructure. The easy example there is data persistence. Or, for the sake of our spaceship manufacturer, maybe it's how to communicate with an external service that helps to verify that potential buyers are properly vetted for space travel.
You'll have a big learning curve as you learn new principles, patterns, and processes. There's no question about that. DDD is a big topic, and gaining expertise from end to end is a big commitment. This course doesn't aim to make you an end-to-end expert in DDD, but to give you a big step forward that will allow you to not only comprehend the concepts, but you'll gain a lot of new tools that you can use right away, whether or not you choose to dig further. And it's worth restating that DDD is not always the correct path for your applications. And it's helpful to keep in mind some of the scenarios where DDD is just going to be overkill. For example, if you have an application or a subdomain that's just a data-driven app and doesn't need much more than a lot of CRUD logic, there's really no need to use DDD. It would be a waste of time and effort.
And be clear about the difference between complexity in your business domain and technical complexity. DDD is designed to help with complex domains. If your domain is simple, even if you have a lot of technical challenges to overcome, DDD still may not be the right path. For example, if you are writing a tic-tac-toe game for a touchscreen with a new complex API, the complexity lies in the touch interactions of the two players on the screen. The domain itself is well known and just comes down to X's and O's. Getting others to follow the DDD approach can also be a drawback. There may be some politics involved in this decision. It really depends on your team and your organization. We hope that another takeaway from this course will be to help you understand the concrete benefits of DDD, which you can show to your coworkers to help convince them.